Okay, so let's be honest. Warhammer is an expensive, time-consuming game, and it has a ton of pitfalls that I see new wargamers falling into every single day. And now, 10th edition is out. More people are getting into Warhammer than ever before, which means that those pitfalls have just become a lot deadlier. I started playing Warhammer 20 years ago, and I made a ton of mistakes, things that I wish I could go back and change. So here I am, the next best thing to a time machine, helping you to avoid the traps now so that you don't regret it later. And hey, even if it's not Warhammer, all of these tips are applicable for any war game. So there's a little bonus for you. Okay, so first up, the most important thing to remember whenever you're getting into Warhammer or any war game, don't jump into the deep end with a huge bundle to start. When first starting Warhammer, you're going to be tempted to buy a huge Combat Patrol box or a bundle like the Leviathan box. And Games Workshop employees are basically reflex trained over at GWHQ to push those bundles when you go into the store in person. This is the first mistake that lots of new folk make. But if there is anything I have learned, it's that the temptation to buy these massive box sets is high, but the ability to complete them is low. Bundles are tempting because you'll typically be getting the miniatures inside them for a lot cheaper than if you bought them separately. Psychologically, this feels good, but also psychologically, when you get home with your new massive box set, you open it up and you see all those sprues in front of you, suddenly Warhammer becomes a bit of a project that is very tough to digest. Metaphorically, don't eat the miniatures. They get stuck. This happens to me all the time, not the eating bit, the psychology bit. A bundle shows me a little bit of ankle and I pick it up and then I bring it home and oh wow, there sure is a lot of stuff in there. This has resulted in a lot of boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of armies that I will simply never get completed. Instead, sometimes it's better to start small and grow an army organically, especially if you're new. Here's my advice. Pick up a box of basic infantry for your chosen faction, build those guys, see if you enjoy the building, then paint them, see if you enjoy the painting, and then if you do enjoy those aspects, start thinking about a bundle. And if you know that you already like those things, just be careful that you're not adding too much to your plate. Another related tip here, a bundle is only worth value if you want everything inside the box. When you're thinking about picking up a bundle, really assess what you're getting inside. You know, when you're spending those hours late at night looking at it on the website when you think everyone else is asleep, take a step back and really think, do you want everything in here? Because if you don't, then the discount value that everyone obsesses over about these box sets, that's immediately wiped out by that dud model or models. And don't buy a Combat Patrol if all you're interested in is half the box. But hey, maybe we're putting the cart before the horse here. How the hell do you even know what you want to play anyway? One of the earliest questions when starting Warhammer is, who will I play? Who is my faction? It's like a star sign, but meaningful. There will be plenty of people telling you that there is no wrong answer. Well, they're wrong. There is a right faction for you, but it might not be what you think it is. I collect a lot of different armies in Warhammer. Drukhari, Genestealer Cult, Sisters of Battle, Astra Militarum, and Black Templar Space Marines. I got a lot of armies, and from playing all of these armies across every single edition of Warhammer, I must tell you, none of them are substantially better than any other to build, paint, or play. Don't worry about picking the strongest army or the most beginner-friendly army in the game or the most meta army. Warhammer doesn't really work that way. Half of the wargaming hobby is building and painting miniatures, and the scale of difficulty between building different armies isn't really that high. The most important thing is to just choose the faction that speaks to you. The one that you love the look of, the one that you can see yourself obsessing over and investing yourself in, the one that you're passionate about. Warhammer, like most war games, is a grower, not a shower. It's a lifestyle game and it will ask a lot of you, so you'd best make sure that you enjoy your choice. For me, I have a strong, compelling hook as to why I collect every army that I do. I collect Dark Eldar because they look great and I'm a sexual deviant. I love Genestealers because I grew up surrounded by pro-guerrilla war murals. Sisters of Battle are extremely nostalgic for me. They're the first army I ever started collecting. Imperial Guard are great because I love playing the normal human in a galaxy of terror. And as for Black Templar Space Marines, well, I lost a bet. Notice that none of these reasons are for the rules. And that's because at one stage or another, all of these armies have been absolutely amazing and dominated competitive play. And at other times, they have been bottom tier. Sell your army on eBay level. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. These things wax and wane. Never buy for rules. The rules change every 3 years. Like seriously, officially, there is a new edition of Warhammer 40k every 3 years. Some people still haven't gotten through that big bundle that I warned about earlier in 3 years. They're still building the 8th edition starter set by now. Hello, Adam. Now, that said, you might want a particular playstyle and you're worried about choosing the wrong army. But honestly, playstyles change over time. There are some broad strokes, but to give you an example, in 10th edition, Drukhari went from being a melee glass cannon force to a run and gun glass cannon force. Nothing in this game is etched in stone. What has served me right every time though is buying an army for the vibes, buying into an army for the character, buying into an army for the aesthetic. You'll always have your miniatures. Those things last forever, as my pile of shame can attest. And if you're facing the problem of having too many factions that you love, or you're just not sure who to play and you're worried about pulling the trigger on the wrong army, then I've got some great news for you, because you can play with more than one army. That's right. Remember, you do not have to commit to a full 2,000 points giant force of miniatures. In fact, you don't need to commit to one army at all. Warhammer is an army level game, meaning that you play games with a lot of miniatures on the table, and that is expensive. But the game can be played in smaller allotments, and it's sometimes a lot better for it. I personally prefer the smaller scale battles for ease of play, pacing, and balance. And the new 10th edition of Warhammer has an entire game mode dedicated to smaller battles called Combat Patrol, which is just as legitimate as the full 2,000 point battle that you'll see most people talk about. This means, though, that you don't need to commit to that single army. Instead, you can act like you're at a buffet, tasting different forces, maybe picking up a small 500 point pancake of AdMech, or a cheeky vol au vent of Adeptus Sororitas, or a big sausage roll of Space Marines. I should have eaten before recording this video. Seriously though, you'll be thankful for the variety. Painting the same models over and over, it gets tough. And if you do ever get bored with Warhammer, remember, you might not enjoy the game, but there's other stuff that you can play. Warhammer can be fun. I've been playing it for like 20 years. It's basically part of my DNA now, presenting a massive concern for the Human Genome Project. But it's not the only miniature war game that I play. If it was, then I probably wouldn't be still collecting, painting, and playing with miniatures. Variety is the spice of life. Also, cinnamon. Miniature war games are just like board games and video games. They have entire genres of gaming, from sci-fi to fantasy to modern to horror to historicals to the downright weird. There's something for everybody, and many are positioned at larger scales of battle, or much, much teenier, tinier, smaller scales of battle, and most are even a lot cheaper to play with their own beautiful miniature ranges and settings. If you play Warhammer and you find that actually you're not really enjoying the gameplay side of it, maybe you find the game a little bit slow in terms of the pacing, or there's too many miniatures that you have to work with, or maybe you're just not having fun, then it could be that Warhammer simply isn't the game for you. But there might be one that is. Playing Warhammer a couple of times and then just bouncing right off it and never trying a different game is just like playing something like Call of Duty and then discovering that you don't enjoy that, so you assume that you don't enjoy video games. There's a lot of other experiences out there. It could be that Warhammer just isn't the game for you, but there might be one that is. Warhammer isn't my favorite game, and I find it overwhelming sometimes. So my recommendation is try some other games, maybe something like One Page Rules. That's a game that allows you to use your Warhammer miniatures in imaginative new ways, and the rules are totally free. Or try a smaller skirmish game like Marvel Crisis Protocol, or Infinity, or Moonstone, or Carnivale, or Relic Blade, or Battletech, or Frostgrave, or Fallout, or Skyrim, or you get the picture. There's a lot of choices out there. But hey, even if you are here just for Warhammer, then here is one of the most important tips. Never buy directly from Games Workshop. I know, this might sound unintuitive, but there's a lot of really good reasons for this. Firstly, you should support your local game store. They really do need your support and help. But also, Games Workshop are the most expensive supplier of Warhammer. I know that sounds weird because they manufacture the Warhammer, so you'd think that they would be able to sell them cheap, but they don't. Third-party retail stores frequently sell Warhammer at a discount, like 10, 20, sometimes 30% off. Considering how expensive Warhammer is, those discounts are extremely welcome. And if there's any tips that you take away from this video, make sure that this is the one, because it will save you a lot of money. I have an affiliate link in the description of this video that will take you to a store that sells Warhammer for much cheaper than buying directly. As upside of that is they also sell a lot of other miniature ranges too. So you get cheaper minis, you get exposed to new games, and it helps support this channel. But really, honestly, if you Google Warhammer discount or Warhammer retail store, you're going to get plenty of options, regardless of where you are in the world. This is especially great because Warhammer is expensive, and what that can mean is that often people find it very intimidating to paint miniatures, to the extent that they might not be able to work up the confidence to put any paint to plastic. So here's my biggest secret. You don't need to be able to paint well, like at all. When you pop the words of Warhammer miniatures into Google, or if you frequent mini painting discords or forums, you will see a lot of amazingly painted models, exceptionally good. There is a small cottage industry of artists and influencers who are churning out some of the most beautifully painted miniatures in existence, and you might want to achieve this standard, or you might just simply be intimidated by it. I am here to tell you, your models will likely not look like that, at least at first. And you might be disappointed in this. You might be disappointed at what you can pull off. You might spend a lot of time following painting guides and find painting laborious and time intensive. Or you might simply just be disappointed in the results of your labor. But do not worry, there is a solution to this, though you might not like to hear it. It's not easy to do, but when you turn this switch in your brain, I guarantee you will enjoy this hobby a lot more. So here it is. All you need to do to achieve painting greatness is to lower your standards. Lower your standards. Just try to have some fun with painting for a while. Slap some paint on your model and see if the intrinsic act of painting brings you joy. Because it might just be the case that you don't enjoy painting. I personally don't enjoy painting models a lot, but I do still have painted armies for Warhammer, and it's because I paint them in my style. I paint them super quickly with a minimum of effort, and that's what works for me. And it will take you some go arounds to figure out what works for you too. And the easiest way to figure out what works for you is to simply paint. And if you're intimidated by beautiful paint jobs, or you're concerned about screwing up your miniature, don't be. Your miniature will not combust into flames in your hand if you accidentally put all your paint on too thick, or you hate the color scheme that you've chosen. You can strip paint from miniatures, or if worst comes to worst, you can always buy another one. Or you can do my favorite solution, which is simply to spray more primer over it again and get to work a second time. Sure, some of the details will be missing, but you know what? No one will notice. What you have to understand is that most people's perceptions of miniatures are totally warped. It can be very intimidating to look into miniature wargaming from the outside. When you look at pictures of miniatures online, you're looking at miniatures under studio lights and zoomed in all up close. That's not how most miniatures are engaged with. Most of the time, you'll be looking at your 1-inch tall miniatures 5 feet away, and there'll be dozens and dozens of them spread out on a table, and the lighting will likely be a little bit dim. No one will judge your paint job, I assure you. It's better for a miniature to be painted badly than not at all. And hey, if all else fails, remember the most important of all hobby secrets. Nuln Oil covers all sins. But if that isn't enough for you, if you haven't had enough tips to satisfy, then check out this video where I go over the 29 worst mistakes that every wargamer makes, you goddamn glutton. And if you want to help support the channel, then check out my Patreon at patreon.com/discourseminiatures, where you can get bonus videos, live streams, and even access to secret Discord rooms where you can chat directly with me. And a huge thanks to my patrons, especially Sonic Bread, CryptoKev Novany, and Mistress RB. Thanks so much for your support, guys, silly names included. and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye-bye!